The Tomb Kings, the undead armies of Nehekara, come forth once more to conquer, driven by their mighty leaders. With their great constructs of stone and metal, supported by undead archers, infantry and cavalry, you will need to be clever to use their strengths and cover their weaknesses. Good magic should assist you as well in your endeavor, as well as the might of the desert sands. In this video, I will go over each lord and hero. I will have a second part just for the units, as I decided to split it up a bit due to time constraints. Let us begin. So of course your army has some advantages and disadvantages. Starting with the advantages, you have good infantry. What you have is actually quite good to tackle the enemy on the field. Good artillery, good monstrous infantry, and note I'm including the missile monstrous infantry of the Ushabti Great Bows here, and great single entities. But the disadvantages is that you have average missiles, almost no flyers, and weak early game units, and also the armament limit issues, which imply that unless you're playing with Archon, you will need at least 12 turns to even have a second army. We begin with the mightiest Cetra the Imperishable, and with so many titles that I could have a 50-minute video just for those. So, he's a spellcaster, he has armor piercing, he is an anti-large single entity. Although he does not have a shield, he's quite tanky and he'll be able to endure a lot of punishment early on. So do not be afraid of sending him versus some of the early enemies, perhaps excluding Scarbrand, unless you give him some help. His disadvantage is his lower speed, so of course you should put him on a mount as soon as you have one available to you. Note, of course, the high melee attack, the high melee defense, and the good charge bonus. Always make sure to have some benefit from those. In terms of abilities, he has Wrath of Thra, an active ability and explosion that goes near him. Very good to just cause damage to any infantry units around him. Then he has the passive ability, the Curse, direct damage ability affecting multiple entities. It's a nice AoE, but only one Cetra is below 50% hit points. Then we have My Will Be Done, which is a nice melee defense and melee attack buff. This increases its range later with the Unwielding Will. So basically it goes from 35 to 55 meters, but no change to the melee defense or melee attack. Affects all allies in range, that's very good. Special note here, so for the typical abilities of the yellow and the red line. So we have the Tomb Strike, basically base weapon damage and melee attack, as well as can cause terror, which doubles into Desert Strike later on. And you also have the Reanimate that also goes into the Resurrect ability. So Reanimate is just a typical rally, leadership, but this one does give the Reanimate, the upgraded version, gives healing per second to all units nearby, which is really super cool, and especially loreful surrounding all the undead and everything. In terms of the other abilities that he can get from the Crown of Nehekara. It's basically an area buff of weapon damage and charge bonus, and also the Blessed Blade of Petra imbues his attacks with flame, blind, and magical attacks. Note that blinded effects are very effective to take out almost anything really fast. Second lord is Grand Hierophant Katep. He's a spellcaster, but a very squishy character, very low combat skills overall. His main idea is really to stay behind and cast to support his troops. Make sure you always have some unit or hero helping him out, as he can easily be overcome by even low quality troops. Once you manage to get him some mount, especially his special Casket of Souls, he should start dishing out a lot of damage, adding to the spells already that he has, of course, with the Lord of Nehekara. It's not the best spell lore book in the game, but still he can do quite a lot of damage. Now for ability Sandstorm, it's a vortex damage spell, decent armor piercing damage, but low range and duration. It can be tricky to use it, you know, just 100 meters, to use it with Katep without leaving him in danger, so be careful when activating this one. He also has the Curse, which we've seen this with Cetra already. It's a direct damage ability affecting multiple entities, nice AoE, activates automatically when hit points are less than 50%. My Will Be Done, of course, +5 melee defense and melee attack, affecting all allies in range. Just keep him close and that's it. And in terms of other abilities from his quest, he can get the Lich Staff, which gives a nice increased cooldown to enemies in range whenever they are casting. So basically very good to deny enemy casters, you know, at least some of their spellcasting abilities. They'll have to work around those increased cooldowns. Next we have High Queen Khalida, the First Lord's not a spellcaster. She just has a poison melee attack and is very focused on supporting her missile troops to become very effective in combat. Overall, she's a fairly average lord who is not really that good in combat. She has decent stats and weapon, but weak armor, no shield, and it will make her fall easily to tougher opponents. She feels like she should have a ranged attack somehow instead, you know? These are the stats that would go with someone that has a ranged attack, but she actually does not have one. She later on has some abilities, as we'll see. But overall, you know, poison damage with good melee attack, good melee defense and weapon strength, you can still do something with her. Now, she does have a Venom Wave, an explosion causes poison and damage, but doesn't affect friendlies, so this is a good way to at least get out of danger. The Curse, it's similar to others, so we already mentioned it before. Then she has the Blessing of Asaph. This is later enhanced to True Blessing of Asaph. It's a buff to your missile units in range, so keep her next to your missile units for better damage from them, especially artillery or, for instance, the Ushabti Great Bows. She's perfect for these guys, with the reload skill, with everything. It's really good to have her in between them, just giving them all the buffs that she can. Melee defense, melee attack from the My Will Be Done as well, which she also has. And then she has Legionary Barrage. Now this is an interesting, it's a wind army ability, full armor piercing. It's good because of the unlimited range, but it doesn't really do a lot of damage. Like, count on it, 18 damage per second, duration 4 seconds. I mean, it's not really that much, you know? It's really not that much, but still it's better to have some damage than no damage. So I guess, yep, you have an army ability which you can cast maybe on some enemy artillery or some units that require some magical damage. That's good. Then we have the Venom Staff. It's a magic missile, 4 charges, good range, decent armor piercing, causes poison and flame damage. So this kind of turns then Khalida into a missile character. So very good to take out enemy single entities from afar, of course. Next we have Archon the Black, a spellcaster with the lore of death. Although heavily armored, is fairly weak still in melee combat. He lacks armor piercing or any bonuses such as anything versus infantry or large, so it should stay clear from engaging enemy characters and just support his troops from behind while ensuring your spells hit precise targets. Later on, make sure you give him a mount to make him stay out of trouble. Right? So overall, these are really not the stats of anyone going into melee, not even against enemy spellcasters, I would say. Which is weird with some of the abilities that he later on has, so he kind of has to engage somewhat in melee. You'll see why, but yeah, let's go for those abilities. First one, Liber Mortis. This affects allies in range, giving them physical resistance and leadership. So 3 uses. This is nice, of course, with the physical resistance. That's always nice. The Curse, 1 use, and we've already covered this previously, so you already know. But this one has an augment, in this case, an upgrade, which also reduces the vigor of enemies, and it has a longer duration. So overall, more damage and even reduces the vigor. Then we have My Will Be Done. Of course, we've seen that. Yep. Let's move on. Curse of Undeath. This is quite interesting because it it's basically the passive ability from the Lore of Empires. It's a regen aura. It affects whenever you're casting, so just make sure that you are casting whenever possible to ensure that you're resurrecting your units as much as possible. Then you have the Tomb Blade of Alkan, and this is very important to note. This summons a larger unit of skeleton warriors, has 5 uses, 5 charges, right? But it only recharges if you're engaged in melee, and that's the issue. So Arkan really shouldn't be in melee too much, so you kind of have to select some targets so that you can use this. So that's a kind of a downside, you know? You gotta find a purpose with that. And then the Staff of Nagash, very easy to have a purpose. Power recharge, decreases cooldowns, great for any spellcaster, really. Then as is your generic lord, you have the Tomb King here without his makeup on. That's why he's hiding behind his shield. Don't worry, guy. We're not too worried about it. Note his stats are slightly weaker. That's because he's receiving the My Will Be Done. But in essence, he doesn't really stand out for anything other than that he's quite tanky. He has a silver shield, he has good armor, and that's about it. This is a good lord to at least withstand some level of punishment, which means that you can outlast the enemy army with this sort of lord leading your army. He also has the curse, so whenever his hit points hit 50%, it activates. He has My Will Be Done. And yes, +5, that's cool. He has the Tomb Strike as well as Reanimate, and so Desert Strike upgrade. So that's nice. Base weapon damage and the melee attack, it's always nice. And also this heal per second from the Reanimate upgraded. But that's about it. There's no specific other abilities. He's just a tanky lord. A very basic one. Let's move on to heroes. And the first hero is a specialist hero, Necrotect. Designed to assist your construct-based units, the Necrotect resembles a bit of a mix in terms of a hybrid hero. He's not that very good in combat, despite having some decent bonus versus infantry and some quite good damage, let's say. He will certainly perish versus any higher quality units, certainly versus any lord or any other hero, any melee hero. Make sure that you field one at least when leading armies with constructs, as that is his main purpose on the field. For abilities, that's his main idea. He has Restore, Healing Constructs. It has 2 uses, so 2 charges of this, which is perfect, especially on single entities, powerful ones. Then he has the passive ability Stone Shaper. Note that this affects allies in range if they are constructs, so more armor, more missile resistance, perfect to approach the enemy to take less damage, you know. So, and then we have, once you have approached the enemy and you want just to cause more damage, the Wrath of the Creator, so armor piercing weapon damage and melee attack. It's not a lot, 6% is really not a lot, so make sure you count this by using this in an area with plenty of your single entities that have plenty of armor piercing to benefit from this, you know, in the best sense possible. He also has Desert Strike, so if needed, and if you get to this, of course, he can still do some damage. Now moving on to the Tomb Prince. He's a basic melee hero, so he wears a silver shield and 70 armor, low melee and melee defense, but having a nice armor piercing and a damage versus large bonus. This is what we call a very good defender for your lord versus large entities or any characters that get too close. Overall, this is the bodyguard dude. You can rely on him to be tanky and to buy you time to react on the battlefield. Like, say that you have a Tomb Prince defending Arkham the Black. That's perfect. That's perfect. Both of them will deal with anyone that comes by and tries to deal with Arkham, because they will have some abilities to counter whatever comes in. He also has the Curse of the Cuff. It can cause an enemy unit to rampage for 13 seconds, which is perfect. It can cause the enemies to focus on him. So, you know, one hero's loss is not as the same as one lord loss, right? And you also have the Guardian. So gives any lord or hero plus 15% physical resistance, ensuring his bodyguard possibilities. Finally, we have the dedicated spellcaster hero, the Lich Priest. You have either the Lore of Death, Light, Nehakara, or Shadows, which you unlock later. It's a typical weak spellcaster, not to be used in melee, very weak to nearly any unit that catches up to him. Make sure you keep him well protected and to use the proper spells when necessary, and have him on a mount, as all undead speed is not their strength, so just make sure that these guys survive and keep casting. That's their motto. For abilities, he has the Curse of Xar. One use of minus 60 armor to enemy units in range as long as the hit points are less than 50%. So, in essence, this is quite a nice ability. There's a lot of synergies to find out, but that will have to be from you. Part 2 comes next with army abilities and with units before and after research, redline skills, and XP. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Should be on the next following days. Bye bye.